All right. Okay. So we're getting into the podcast, and today we are talking. We're asking an important question. Actually, today we're asking, are you too late? So we're gonna get into it very quickly. I'm gonna give a 30 seconds or so for some people to log in and join me. Guys, as you tune in, make sure to stick around. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A at the end of the podcast. So once we're done the recording, we're going to do some Q&A. So make sure you're sticking around for that. But let's get into it. We are asking a very important question. Are you too late? And we're going to get going in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the #1 show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dussault, and today we are asking a very important question. We are asking, are you too late? Now, the reason I'm asking this, and I'm going to leave names out of it, but the reason I'm asking this question, the reason I'm bringing this to you is because the other day I had a conversation with an athlete. He told me he's got good experience in various martial arts, but has never actually done MMA. He's 30 years old, and he said, is it too late for me to give MMA a try to really make something out of it? And immediately I said no. And the reason I said no is because it's happened before. And for example, Daniel Cormier was a 2-division champion, made millions of dollars in his MMA career, and he started MMA at 30 years old. And the athlete immediately responded back with, well, DC was an Olympian, so that's, it's not the same. And it's yeah, he obviously had a very big background in wrestling, but in a very short period of time, he went from never having done MMA to being a world champion, to having a long reign, to being one of the greatest fighters of all time. So if he can do that, are you going to be the next Daniel Cormier? Maybe not, but there's a very good chance that you could have a few years and a good career and get some good things out of it. And the conversation went back and forth a little bit. There were some more reasons why he kind of felt like he didn't want to do it. And then I kept kind of coming back and being like, okay, I understand where you're at, but, and then kind of giving him reasons that, you could still go for it if that's what you really wanted. And it made me really think. It made me think a lot because, again, this is not meant as any kind of shot at this individual because I get similar messages quite often. But this made me think a lot because there are a lot of people out there that will spend years wondering if they're too late to do something instead of actually doing it. One of the other discussion points was this athlete was saying that in his career, over the last few years in his town, the MMA gyms had a certain schedule and it didn't really work for him. So he'd been thinking for years about how he was going to be able to make it work, and he just didn't know. And then he said, I really need to go talk to the coaches. And I was like, well, I'm kind of thinking when I heard that, I was like, if you've been thinking about this for years and you haven't talked to the coaches yet, what kind of action have you taken towards doing this? You know what I mean? So again, I get similar messages to this all the time. And this is why I wanted to do a podcast about it, because plain and simple, guys, if you start at 30 years old, are you going to be the next Daniel Cormier? Are you going to win 2 UFC belts and make millions of dollars out of your career? Maybe not. But if it is really itching at you to, give that career a try and really go all in on it, you got to do it now, right? Because if you sit with, well, the gym in my town doesn't necessarily have the right schedule for me, and, money's kind of tight, so I might not be able to make the commitment like somebody who's younger. I'm struggling with this, and, there's always going to be reasons not to do it. There's always going to be reasons not to do it. You're always going to be able to find the reason not to go for it. But what I really want to bring this back to is as one perfect example of, reasons not to do something, I opened my gym in March 2021 when we were right in the middle of COVID lockdowns. I hadn't been working. I was barely staying above the surface, but this had been something I'd wanted to do for a very long time. and rental properties were a little bit cheaper at the time. And I was like, you know what? This is the time to do it. We were able to buy a bunch of equipment secondhand, and we were able to open our gym. Now, I could have pointed to 1,000 different reasons not to do that because, we're in the middle of lockdowns. It could get shut down again. You're not working right now, and income is very uncertain. Every reason was pointing to this is a bad idea. But when you're willing to work your face off at something, you can create something good out of a bad idea. And what I really want to bring this back to for athletes as well is that whatever risk you're trying to take, whatever, next step you're trying to take in life, you're always going to be able to find reasons not to. It's always going to be, financially, this doesn't make sense, or I might have to move cities and I'm not sure if I want to do that, or, I'm taking this big risk while all my friends from high school are getting married and having kids and, taking those big steps. And I'm, doing this other thing that doesn't make any sense. And well, the gym in my town doesn't have a good schedule that works with me. Whatever you might come up with, you've got to understand that there's always going to be a million reasons not to. But the reason that you do it anyway, and the reason that I always come back to, is when I'm 90 years old and I'm looking back at life, I'm never going to look back and be thankful that I didn't try something. I'm never going to look back and be like, oh, thank God I didn't try to go for that, whatever it is that I was trying to go for. And that's what I explained to this guy too. I was like, when you're in your 90s and you're looking back at life, are you going to be sitting back being like, oh, thank God I didn't give this MMA career that I wanted a shot? Or are you going to be looking back going, man, what if I had just done it? You know what I mean? And again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, if you start MMA at 30, you're going to have some great career. But also, I will sit here and say, I would much rather look back on my life and be like, I gave what I wanted to do a shot and it didn't work out, than look back on my life and wonder, man, what if I had just tried? What if I had just gone all in? What if I had just given it, 3 years of my life to see what I could have done with it? And when you take that kind of mentality, amazing things happen for you. When you take that kind of mentality, amazing things happen. It reminded me actually of one of the stories early in this podcast, I think like episode 12. And we're on I think 470 episodes now, maybe more. And I was talking to an ex-CFL player, and he basically said, he was like, he got cut from the league his first year trying out. Then he came back, he got cut again. It was, I think, his third year trying out, or the second year, I think he played 2 games and then got released. And then his third year, he kind of finally broke onto the scene, played a few seasons, had his good career, and then it was done. And I asked him, I was like, after those first 2 years, what made you think, okay, I got to do this again? And he said he lives his life never wanting to be the I wish guy. And the I wish guy, what he said is, he's like, you go back to, any town, any small town in the States, and you've got that 50-year-old guy sitting at the bar wearing his leather jacket, talking about how great he was in college. He was like, and talking about how he could have been great in the pros if he had just, dialed it in a little more, or if it wasn't for that knee injury, or blah, 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 blah. And he was like, I just didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be that guy coming back to that bar and talking about hey, I did everything and I actually made it. And I just knew after getting cut those first 2 years, I could do more. I could do more. I could try again. And it wasn't over. And I just found that so inspiring that that's literally the attitude I take to everything. And so if you're listening to this, what I want you to take away, what I want you to really understand is that there's always going to be 1,000 reasons, million reasons not to do something. There's always going to be a reason not to pursue a passion. There's always going to be a reason to take the safe route instead of the risky route. There's always going to be a reason not to do it. But you can either sit with that reason and decide, okay, well, my life's over because I have this reason that I shouldn't do it. Or you can say, fuck that reason and make a decision, right? You can say, fuck that reason and make a decision and say, this is what I want to try. So I'm going to give it everything I've got, and I'm going to try to get as far as I can. By the way, there's nothing wrong with not giving it a try. Like coming back to this athlete I was talking about at the start of the episode, if we had had that discussion and he said, well, you know what, like, yeah, it would be cool, but I don't really want to, then like, that's fair. If you don't want to put the work, the time, the finances and everything like that into trying to build a career as a professional athlete, you don't have to. But if you want to do it, and what made me think, okay, this guy wants to do it, was he sent me a message out of nowhere asking, is it too late for me? You get what I mean? So it's like he's clearly looking for some sort of confirmation one way or the other. Is it too late? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Let's try and find out. And then when I said no, there were reasons why. Oh, but what about this? But what about that? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like there's reasons that you could say right now that it's too late. Or you can say, well, the cards aren't in my favor, but this is something that I want to try and this is something that I want to do. And there's no better time like the present. But the biggest, most important thing that you can take away from that is it has to be action. Because you can sit around and think about it for the next 3 years. You can sit around and wonder, okay, is the gym going to be right? Am I going to, have the money? Am I going to be able to put the time in? Am I going to be able to do the practices? Am I going to be able to make it? What's the path look like to make it? But if you sit around and wonder for the next 3 years, then maybe it is too late. But if you just jump in and you say, okay, I'm going to start, I'm going to get working on this, I'm going to actually start moving forward, you're going to figure more things out along the way. And then just because this whole episode has been kind of bouncing around everywhere, coming back to the guy I was talking about, the CFL player that, tried out for like 3 years in a row. I'm pretty sure it was. Don't quote me on that if you go back and check it out. When we were talking about, being the I wish guy, he ended up playing, I believe, 8 seasons in the CFL. And he said from that, what happened is he actually got coaching opportunities. So because this guy continued to move forward and continued to chase the passion, even when all indications were that it wasn't going to work out for him, he continued to do it, continued to move forward, continued to chase the passion. He ended up getting an opportunity to coach professional football. And because he got that opportunity, now he's around football for his whole life. Because he pushed through and chased the passion when it didn't look possible, he made a career doing something he absolutely loves. So, now coming back again to keep bouncing around to this athlete we were talking about at the start of the episode, if you're in a similar situation to that, you're a little bit older, you have, you've got some experience, but you've never really put it together, or whatever it might be, and you're thinking, I want to try this. There's only one answer, and that answer is try it, because it's going to go a couple of different ways. Either A, you're going to go all in, you're going to try it, you're going to have a good rise, you're going to have a good run, you're going to have a couple of years in the UFC. Are you going to be, the longtime reigning champion, number 1 on the pound for pound list? Maybe not. But you're going to be able to look back on your life and be like, man, I gave it a shot, I went through and I did it. Either that, or you're going to go all in, you're going to have some fights, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, you're not going to get that career that you're looking for. But because you went all in and you actually did it, you put the time, the work, the finances, everything that you needed to towards chasing this dream, maybe you have enough of a record and you have enough of a reputation on the regional scene that you're able to open a gym and you're able to start coaching. And now instead of being a fighter, you're around martial arts your whole life and you're coaching other fighters. Maybe someone at one of the shows, watches you fight and goes, holy shit, like that was inspiring. Like what a great performance. And, loves that, picks you up and says, hey, I run a, agency where we represent fighters. And now you get in to become an agent and actually represent and help fighters in their careers. Maybe nothing comes of it. But the only way to make sure that nothing comes of it is if you don't fucking try. But if you actually are willing to put the effort and the time and the money and everything into it, only positives can come from making that kind of investment. And absolute worst case, let's say you go all in, you try your best, it doesn't work out, nobody picks you up, you don't open a gym, anything like that. The best part of it is you're going to be able to look back on life in your 70s, 80s, 90s and know the answer. You're not going to look back in those years and go, man, what if I had just tried this? What if I had just done that? Maybe if I had just, you're going to look back and you're going to go, you know what? I gave it a shot. It didn't work out. And then I moved on and I did something else. But instead, you don't take action on it. You sit around and think about it forever until you can't do it. And now you're going to live the rest of your life being like, man, what if I had just started? What if I had just done it? What if I tried? What could I have accomplished if I had done it? You know, maybe I wouldn't have been a world champion, but maybe I could have fought in the UFC. How cool would that have been? And personally, if I've got the choice between looking back on life and knowing that I tried and it didn't work out, or looking back on life and wondering, what if I had tried harder? The answer I'm taking every single time is looking back at life and knowing I gave it everything I had. So guys, that's it. That's all. I appreciate you all for tuning in. I hope you got some value from that. If you did, I would love to know what it is. Shoot me a message across any of my social media platforms. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I will catch you on the next episode.